Hello everyone, welcome back to my additional max and max channel. For today's video sharing, I will share with you about the max reasoning. So we'll focus on the contra positive and converse statement. So let's get started with the class. Have fun!
Converse and contrapositives. And in this sentence it says two intersecting lines create an angle. Okay, so we have to write the inverse, converse, and contrapositive, and I just listed here what each three things are, and just in case you forgot, right? Inverse is when you negate both the hypothesis and conclusion. Converse, switch, and then contrapositive is both negate and switch, right? So let's go ahead and actually write the inverse, converse, and contrapositive, and let's start with the inverse. So what is the inverse? So inverse, I wrote here, negate both the hypothesis and conclusion. So what that means is we want to negate the hypothesis and conclusion, but do we see an hypothesis and conclusion anywhere here? Not really. Why? Because the statement is actually not in the if-then form, right? We don't see a if, blah, 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 then blah, 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 blah. We first have to make this sentence into that form, then write the inverse, right? So let's go ahead and take this guy and write it into an if-then statement. So here we have two intersecting lines create an angle, and I'm thinking, okay, we can rewrite that to, if blank, then blank, and what do I fill in the blanks? Well, I see two intersecting lines, and I see create an angle, right? So I'm probably thinking, let's call this the hypothesis, let's call this the conclusion, right? So in my statement, I would call this if two lines, let's use a different color, if two lines intersect, and as you can see here, I just reworded the sentence a little bit. Instead of two intersecting lines, I wrote two lines intersect, so it makes more sense. So here we have, if two lines intersect, then create an angle. Well, we can rewrite that as it will create an angle. Okay, so we have our if-then statement. Now let's go ahead and actually write out our inverse. So negate this guy and negate this guy. That will be our inverse. So here we will have if, what's the negation of two lines intersect? Well, if they don't intersect, right? So if two lines don't intersect, then, okay, we got to negate this too. It will create an angle. The opposite of that will be it will not create an angle. So it will not create an angle. Okay. And this is the not P, and this is the not Q, right? Cool. Okay, so we know the inverse. Let's go ahead and take a look at the converse. So converse. So what is converse again? Converse is when you just switch it. So just switch the hypothesis and conclusion. So what that means is you're going to have to switch these two. Okay? So we're going to do the switcheroo. And here, if you were to switch it, our converse statement will look like this. If, right, move this guy to here, then it will be if it will create an angle, then, and then I write the two lines intersect on this side. So then I'll add the in here so that the sentence makes more sense. Then the two lines intersect. All right, so we have that to be the converse. Just do the switch and just add a few more words so that that sentence actually makes sense. So here was my the things I underlined. This was earlier was P, but now this is Q. Now this turned into P. Okay, so now that's my converse. Let's go ahead and write our contrapositive. So contrapositive, what does that look like? Well, contrapositive does both things, right? It does what the inverse does and also does what the converse does. So negate and switch at the same time, the hypothesis and conclusion. So here, we're going to switch, like I wrote earlier here, but we're also going to negate. So we're going to have to say two lines intersect, two lines not intersect, and then we're going to have to do it will not create, right? So switch and put the nots. So this is what our contrapositive would look like. It would say if it will not create an angle, if it will not create an angle, then, this is an A by the way, then here, right, two lines will not, let's do will not intersect. Again, try to make the sentence actually make sense. So if it will not create an angle, then two lines will not intersect. Again, this is about my not Q and this is my not P. Okay? And that is the contrapositive. So we actually wrote out every single thing and we are pretty much done here. So let's go on and move to the next question. So here again, we're given a statement, write the inverse, converse, and contrapositive. And just in case you forgot all of those and what they are, this is what they do. First of all, inverse negates the hypothesis and the conclusion, right? So let's actually write out the inverse. But again, just to make sure, before we write out the inverse, is our statement here in the if-then form? Yes, it is, right? We see an if here. And we see a then here, right? So we actually see that this is a conditional statement already. So we can go ahead and write the inverse. So inverse. We want to negate the hypothesis and conclusion. So what is the hypothesis and what is the conclusion? Well, today is Monday is the hypothesis, right? It's the thing or the phrase after the word if. So this is the hypothesis. And this right here, Kevin will play soccer, that is the conclusion because it's the phrase after then. So now we gotta negate them. So instead of saying today is Monday, we're gonna have to say today is not Monday, right? That's the inverse, or not the inverse, but that is the negation. So here, Kevin will play soccer, we gotta negate this, so Kevin will not play soccer. So then our inverse statement will look like this. If today is not Monday, then Kevin will not, right, will not play soccer. This part here is the negation, and this part here is the negation, right? Negated hypothesis, negated conclusion. So basically, not P implies not Q. But anyways, we're done with the inverse. Let's take a look at the contrapositive. Or not contrapositive, sorry. Let's take a look at the converse. Because that is the next one. Okay, so converse, what is that? Well, converse is, instead of negating, we're actually just switching. So all we gotta do is just take these two and switch them. So what we're gonna have is if, instead of having today's Monday, we're gonna have this guy instead. So if Kevin will play soccer, then what? Then we have the hypothesis, right? So in today is Monday. So this is going to be our hypothesis now, and this was our conclusion now, right? So and we switch them, so now this is actually ending up being the conclusion. This actually ends up being the hypothesis. But anyways, again, what is converse? Just switching them. We switch them, we're done. Let's go ahead and do the next one, the contrapositive. So what is contrapositive? The contrapositive is doing both the inverse and converse at the same time. So you do the switcheroo and you negate it, right? So you're going to have to switch these two and you're going to have to negate it. So today is not Monday and Kevin will not play soccer. Switch and negate. So we will have if, so switch, so this is actually now in the front here. If Kevin will not play soccer, then what? Then today is not Monday. Okay. Okay, and this is the pretty much not Q, and this part here is the not P. Okay, so we got the inverse, converse, contrapositive. Let's go ahead and do the next question. So now we actually are not dealing with phrases anymore, we're dealing with equations, but nevertheless, we are still going to have to write the inverse, converse, and contrapositive. Again, make sure that this statement is in conditional form first, and as you can see, there's the if, right? You see the if, you see the then. It's a conditional statement, and therefore, let's go ahead and write the inverse, converse, and contrapositive. All right, cool. So, okay, inverse. How do we write the inverse? Inverse, we have to negate the hypothesis and conclusion. So here in our statement, we got to negate our hypothesis. How do we negate 1 plus 2 is equal to 3? We negate it by simply saying that 1 plus 2 does not equal to 3. Right? That's the opposite of 1 plus 2 is equal to 3. 1 plus 2 is not equal to 3. What about the conclusion? Got to negate that as well. Again, do the same thing. Instead of saying equal to, say not equal to. They're opposites. So 1 squared plus 2 squared is not equal to 3 squared. So here our inverse would be the following. Our inverse would be this. So if 1 plus 2 does not equal to 3, then 1 squared plus 2 squared does not equal to 3 squared. That's the inverse. Now what about the converse? What about converse? Converse just involves switching around the hypothesis and conclusion, right? So here remember this was a hypothesis, this is the conclusion. We just want to switch those two around. So, and that would be our converse. So let's actually write that down. So for our converse, we would have if this guy becomes here, so if 1 square plus 2 square is equal to 3 square, then now this guy becomes here, so then 1 plus 2 is equal to 3. Okay, that's the converse, just switch them. Let's go ahead and actually take a look at the contrapositive now. So what is a contrapositive? Well, contrapositive involves doing both the inverse and converse, right? So here, what we're gonna do is, right, switch them and negate them. So here, instead of equal, we have not equal. Here we have equal, not equal. So these are negated and we're switching. So now we actually have the following contrapositive statement. And that is if 1 square plus 2 square is not equal to 3 square, right? This guy is going to be here. Then 1 plus 2 does not equal to 3. And we got that from this part moving to here. Okay, and that's a contrapositive. That's pretty much it. We have written the inverse, converse, and contrapositive. Let's go ahead and do the next question.
Alright, thank you. So that's a sharing from the US teacher about the converse statement, the contra positive statement, and how to determine whether is it true or false statement. So I really hope that you have better understanding of the converse and contra positive statement. Till then, I shall see you in my next video lesson. Bye bye and have a nice day.